My name is Elizabeth Aloni, and I'm with Schneps Media. We're the largest media company in New York City. We publish over 70 newspapers, magazines, websites, webinars, podcasts, and events throughout Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Manhattan, Westchester, Long Island, and Philadelphia. We're thrilled to bring you today's topic, the real deal, moving to Long Island. And moving to Long Island has never been a hotter topic. For many, Long Island, although, is a mystery. There are so many questions. You know, what are the neighborhoods like? What about the commute? The North Shore versus the South Shore, Nassau, Suffolk. So we're going to have a chance to have all those questions answered. I want to say a big thank you to our sponsor, Daniel Gale, Sotherby's International Realty, and our esteemed panelists who are going to be able to answer these questions and so many more. I want to get started by introducing our panelists to you. So please wave to our attendees. But we have Jeanne Leonard, who is an associate broker of Daniel Gale Sotherby's International. Jeanne Leonard has been a real estate broker since 1986. She's a top producer for Daniel Gale Sotherby's International in Suffolk County and has lived in the Cold Spring Harbor and Huntington area since 1968. Welcome, Jeanne.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce you to Chris Jelani. He's an associate broker for Daniel Gale Sotherby's International in Nassau County, Long Island. He's also a member of the Real Estate Board of New York and Manhattan and specializes in Nassau, the Gold Coast of Long Island, where he lives with his family. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you so much.
Next, I'd like to introduce you to Danny Pisani, who's the vice president at Contour Mortgage. And for the past 15 years, Danny has been educating New Yorkers about the mortgage industry, walking them through every step of the process from the initial application to approval. Danny's an executive vice president and director of sales for Contour Mortgage, voted best mortgage company on Long Island 4 of the last 5 years. Welcome,
Thank you.
Danny.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least is Nataly Goldstein of the Manhattan-based law firm, Pardalis Nohavicka. Nataly is the leading real estate and corporate transaction attorney there, and she represents buyers and sellers of cooperatives, condominiums, and residential matters. Welcome, Nataly.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to get started with Jeanne and ask you about the effects of the shutdown right now. You know, is it possible to rent or buy? How have things changed since the restrictions? Can you talk to us a little bit about how the pandemic has affected real estate in your neck of the woods?
Well, we had a very severe shutdown here in Suffolk County where we were 100% stopped and everyone was hunkered in, and so real estate as a whole came to a shutdown. Then when we entered phase 2, we saw a very big rental interest because that was in April, May. So people were trying to get out of the city for the summer. So we saw a very strong interest in rentals. Since then, it has transitioned back into buying real estate. We have seen an uptick in not only people coming out from Manhattan and Queens and the boroughs, but also the pent-up demand that we had from buyers pre-COVID. We were really in the beginning of our full swing of market in March, and then when we shut down, obviously there was nothing to do, and now so we're pretty busy right now. We've got pockets or areas in Suffolk County that are stronger than others, but as a whole, we have a very strong buying market right now.
So how do you think the pandemic has affected that? Are you seeing, you know, more people coming from the city? Are you seeing a tighter market? How do you think it's
Well, when I say what I am hearing, it's because it's what I'm hearing on our weekly meetings, what I'm hearing from other agents, what I'm hearing from just listening to the market from buyers who are coming out. We do have a stronger buying pool from Manhattan right now. People do want to come out from the city. A lot of the buyers who I've been in contact with are buyers who were on the fence and now are getting off the fence. There's still a lot of uncertainty from buyers because they're not 100% sure about schools. They're not 100% sure about their jobs. Many people are not going back until 2021 into the city. So there's a lot of uncertainty still, yet we are seeing, because we are low in some areas of our market in inventory, so we are seeing a stronger buying demand.
Okay, thank you so much. Danny, I have a question for you. What do potential buyers need to know about financing on Long Island now?
There's so much, I guess, but I mean, really, more than ever, they just need to make sure that if they're not pre-approved, they get pre-approved way before they start looking. If they were pre-approved during or prior this pandemic, a lot of the guidelines have changed quite a bit. You know, banks like Chase, for example, went from taking 3 or 5% down to a minimum 20, no matter what. If they don't have jobs, you know, or we're out of work, it plays differently for people, whether they're self-employed, on a salary, paid hourly. There's too many things to mention. It would take forever. So really just making sure that they're with somebody who knows what they're doing, that they're up on the guidelines. Because, and if they were pre-approved, definitely just make sure that they're still pre-approved. Go back and talk to the loan officers. A lot of banks, I mean, most banks right now, I mean, this is the busiest we've seen it since 1993 in our company. And by far, I've already passed my last year's production. You know, so not every loan officer is following up people who were pre-approved 2 months ago or 3 months ago, and making sure that nothing's changed in the situation. So, you know, just be proactive with your loan officer. You know, with us, people like us, like we give commitments to buyers now before they look. So, I mean, that's a big help. It's a nice thing for the realtors to have, because we're also seeing record numbers of pre-approvals that go to contract and then they're not closing because something changed in the buyer's situation. So just really just be proactive with the banks.
Are you finding that it's different in getting a mortgage today because of the pandemic, or are things still moving similarly to pre-pandemic?
I mean, I've always been a face-to-face person. I like sitting down with people. I feel like they understand things more when we're looking at it together. So I've actually had to shift into like electronic signatures and things like that. But, you know, after the first couple of weeks, you know, you get used to it. So you're able to walk them through over the phone, and you adapt. And so really, other than that, for us, no. I mean, there's a lot of banks that slowed down. There are banks that have priced themselves out or changed what products they do just to slow down the intake of loans. I mean, we're still on average closing loans in less than 30 days. You know, I had a veteran 2 weeks ago that we closed in 16 days. So, I mean, and that's on a VA loan. So that was pretty impressive. And really, that was all title. So titles, you know, again, the counties are doing better and the towns are doing better than they were. But nothing else for us, business as usual. I don't know if that's the same across the board, but
well, that's certainly good news for buyers and sellers.
yes.
So Nataly, as an attorney, speak a little bit about your role in the process and what piece of advice that you give your clients.
So generally the attorneys come in once a purchaser has already had an accepted offer. I would act as either a seller's attorney, purchaser's attorney, draft the contract, negotiate terms with the other side, and we then have our clients now via Zoom review contracts and sign electronically. But I think our biggest role is protecting our client in this whole process. And that's important because homeowners are very excited, especially first-time home buyers. I know I was, and you kind of lose sight of, you know, any obstacles or anything that would come your way. And so the attorney here is working to protect your assets and your interests by negotiating terms for you. We do a title search, which is basically a search on the seller, the purchaser, and the property itself. So in Long Island, you know, what people don't realize is that there are more things that would pop up in title than there would in the city with a co-op or a condo, especially, where, you know, with a co-op, you would just do like a lien search, which basically is running like a report on the seller and if they have any liens. In Long Island, we are so focused on getting a survey for the property and running title. It could take several weeks to clear title to get to a closing, especially now that everyone is delayed. For first-time home buyers in Long Island, my biggest word of advice is, first of all, trust your attorney. People think that attorneys are here to break a deal or make things difficult. That is not my goal at all. I want to work with brokers. I want to work with my client. My end goal is to close, but I want to protect you in that process. And so to do that, I have to run title. I have to review the contract and, you know, make sure that we're negotiating the right terms for you, especially during this time where we have clients who are really concerned with potentially losing their job, you know, not having the finances to proceed if the closing is going to be in 60 days from now, 90 days from now even, which is a scary thought. But my biggest thing is always title to clients. And in particular in Long Island, we're concerned with easements, encroachments. Something that home buyers don't think about is an oil tank. Long Island has many underground oil tanks that need to be removed with a certificate. It needs to be approved. Sometimes there's a leak. When you talk to a city, you know, renter or condo owner, they have no idea what I'm talking about in terms of an underground oil tank. But this is what we do to kind of protect the client. And then once we have clear title and the loan is clear from your bank, then we could close. Closings used to be, you know, a round table with all parties involved. Now I'm seeing closings anyway from attorneys driving up to the client's like front doorstep to sign documents, or Zoom calls. I'm going to a closing tomorrow that's actually in person, which is shocking, but I think every two people have their own little like office space or something. So, I mean, obviously COVID has changed the way that we work as attorneys, but our goal has remained the same and our process essentially is the same, protecting our clients and just doing this step-by-step process to get you to where we have to be at the end.
Right. So there's a lot of things to look out for, and it's good to have an attorney who knows what to look out for ahead of time.
I mean, in New York, unlike some other states, you're required to have an attorney with you for a real estate transaction. I hate to say this, but New Yorkers are shrewd. Like everyone, you know, is somewhat of a hustler. Everyone's kind of up to date with facts and everyone is knowledgeable. And so you need to be sure that you're protected from someone who may potentially be taking advantage of you. That's why it's important to even contact an attorney before, you know, in the beginning of this process, before you have an accepted offer, to kind of guide you, tell you what to look for.
Thank you. This is really important information to know, Nataly. Chris, I wanted to turn to you now of talking about making the move. How do you find a community? I know that you work a lot in Nassau County, but how do you know, Port Washington, Manhasset, South Shore versus the North Shore? How do you work with clients and help them find the right community for themselves?
Well, what we do at Daniel Gale Sotheby's is a little bit different. And what I mean by that is that we kind of curate our business model and our plan around each and every client's specific needs. And we ask, we try to concentrate on the most important question in buying and selling, which is the why. So a lot of real estate brokers and other professionals look over the most important question, I think, in any sales transaction, whether you're selling a car or anything. That's the why. What are your goals? Why are you selling? Why are you looking to buy? What is your 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan look like? And then we don't obviously steer anybody in a specific area, but we do guide them and educating them on different sectors of Long Island, proximity to highways and proximity to beaches. I had a client who came in from California, and he was like, "I need to be within arm's length distance from water." So we showed him. I showed him Great Neck, and I showed him Long Beach, and he ended up choosing Long Beach, which is a little outside my my sector, but I'm familiar with the area. But yeah, so we try to curate our plan around the client's goals. Most of our buyers are somewhat knowledgeable and educated in the areas they want to be. So we just take that and bring any insight that we can to the transaction. I mean, obviously this is our new norm. I get asked a lot, when are things going to get back to normal? And I tell everyone, fortunately and unfortunately, this is our new norm. And we have to figure out a different way of doing business. I've adapted pretty well, and most of us have adapted pretty well to the changing times. But as most of the panels, have been emphasizing on, is having the right professional on your side. I think the most common word associated with the entire pandemic, throughout the rise and the plateau, and now the renewed rise, is uncertainty. And when there's uncertainty in any transaction, the most important thing is to have the right professional on your side, to calm those nerves and to educate the client on different aspects, on what they should be concerned about, what they shouldn't be concerned about, and help them guide through the process. I mean, it's it's a very volatile market that we're dealing with. Not only in the financial sector, but also in real estate. And we are getting a large influx of buyers coming in from congested areas, whether it's Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, or outside. And they're looking for space. That's the number one thing that I'm hearing, is everybody wants space. And renters that came in, I don't specialize in rental, but we had, like Jeanne said, we had a tremendous amount of interest in rentals in Nassau County, Suffolk County. And again, I tell my clients, we could definitely find you a rental if this is something that you want to try for the summer and see if it's the right fit for you. But again, let's get back to your why. Why are you looking to leave New York City or Queens, and why are you looking for a home with a pool? Is it something that is going to be a short-term need that you're not going to have next year, or do you foresee yourself wanting a pool for the next 20 years? And if that's the case, maybe we should poke into that avenue and maybe look for something that could be your next forever home. So it's very interesting, but it's again, what we do a little differently is we try to understand the client's needs first. Even on listings, I'll go to, because there's a lot of people that are very curious on the way the real estate market is trending. I saw a great question posted earlier saying that, I don't know if I could find it, but it said in the lines of, there's like a high peak in real estate market, and do we see it coming down in the next 2 years? Obviously, none of us have a crystal ball, but I personally don't see this changing, this demand changing. And again, it goes back to the whys. People want space. This is our new norm. No matter what happens with the virus, and whether it peaks again, God forbid, or it levels off, I think people now have a new sense of awareness um, and and personal habits that have changed. You know, the virus has impacted the way we spend money, the way we shop, and definitely the way we want to live. So I don't see this any drops. There might be a correction in certain markets, you know, maybe the Hamptons, but I think for the most part in most of Nassau, Suffolk, I don't see any downward trends in values.
Great. So you really use the why to help people find out what's the right community for them, what's the right from a financial standpoint to a lifestyle standpoint, to be able to figure out what's the right community for them and the right type of house for them.
Correct. So we don't really try to concentrate too much on the right community for the buyer. We let them reach that you know, that point on where they want to be. We just try to educate them on the different aspects of different communities and what different communities offer. But you know, it's important for buyers to decide for themselves. You know, like I tell both my buyers and sellers that I work for you. My job is to lay out the facts, and then you make the decision. You know, I was talking to, I was at a listing appointment the other day, and there was a personal friend of mine. We were out to dinner, and they said, you know, we're thinking about selling our house. And I said, all right, great, let's talk about that. And when I went to their house and sat down at their you know, dining room table, you know, they said, let me show you the house. And I said, we'll get to that. Your house is beautiful, and I'm sure it's beautiful, but let's try to get an understanding of what your plans are. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to downsize, upsize? And they said, oh, we want a house with a pool, but we want to stay in the same development. But then they said, we were thinking about buying in the Hamptons or a condo in the city. And I could tell that they were uncertain about where they wanted to go exactly. So we ended up, after about 2 days of discussion, that this wasn't the right time for them to sell and to list. As much as I wanted the listing and to sell, I can't, without even doing a tour of their house. You know, we came to the understanding that you know, that this wasn't this wasn't the right move for them. So it's
help them
yeah.
decide what's best. Jeannie, thank you so much, Chris. Jeannie, what about in Suffolk County? What's happening in Suffolk County? Is it a good time to sell? Is it a good time to buy? Tell us a little bit about that part of the island.
Well, Suffolk County is a big county, and it goes a long way, all the way out to Montauk. So my focus is really on the North Shore. That's my area, even though we always have an eye on what's going on, you know, left and right of you. But for our area, we're busy. We're very happy to be back to work, even though I have to give kudos to Daniel Gale. They were really on top of it. We were the first to be doing virtual open houses and everything, learning how to do Zoom and teaching us. So we really got up and running very quickly, which I think put us in a very good position to help buyers get out there and learn how to navigate the new norm. And we do have a new norm. We have very strict conditions to work under, you know, and we have to really be very careful. We have to
What are those? What is happening with people who are looking to sell and buy homes? How are you doing it now?
Well, you know, it was a little scary, to be honest, in the beginning, because, you know, you're out there in the public after being, you know, in your home for a very long time. So, but, you know, we are what I think, to circle back to what Natalie and Danny and what we're all saying here, is the value. I think what this has really taught us as professionals is that we really have to work together to put together a team for your seller, for your buyer, to keep everyone safe. So the point for your seller is to make sure that when you're making an appointment to show their home, that it's a valid buyer. Do they have a pre-approval? Do they have, you know, proof of funds? Do they have their attorney in place? Do they have a home that they need to sell? You know, what is getting all of the answers for your seller first, especially if people are living in their home and if they have children and are living in their home, they want to make sure that if they're going to leave their house in your care to show your home, that, you know, what is the protocol? So to answer your question, Elizabeth, the protocol is we have several disclosures. Some are New York State and some are just Daniel Gale, that both buyers and sellers have to sign. Two of them are COVID related, one of them fair housing related, and one of them is our normal New York State disclosure for we are representing and the rules for that. And so I like to send everything ahead of time via email to a prospective buyer or seller, so that way everything is signed. And, you know, I'd ask some questions, and when I meet a buyer, you know, we're wearing masks, and I ask a buyer, please do not touch anything. I ask my sellers to leave as much open as possible. I ask my sellers to turn on all their lights and I tell the buyer, please, if you would like to open a closet or a door, please let me know. I'll be happy to open it. I have a glove. I wipe everything down. I don't turn off the lights. Unfortunately, the seller has to run around and do that because, you know, the least I can touch and the shorter amount of time I can be in a house, the better for everyone. And we're just trying to keep everyone safe, and also give everyone a fair opportunity to see a property.
Great. What about pricing? Are you seeing an increase in pricing around now? Is it a softer market? How would you describe, and Chris too, if you have some input into it.
We just ran the numbers. I mean, we just did the numbers last week in our office for a couple of the main areas that we service here. There's a slight uptick, but we're not seeing, you know, price, you know, going extraordinarily high. I mean, if you have a well-priced home and you are, you know, somewhat in good condition, in a good location, and your taxes are not too high, you're going to sell, you know, because that's just the market. Because
I think that's key. I think pricing is the most important thing.
Yeah. We just had a town hall
you have to
on
price
it
it properly.
2 weeks ago, and our CEO, you know, we are always having town halls and having, you know, people come in and talk to us. You know, pre-COVID, after COVID, we have been a very price-driven market. Buyers are very educated. They're very smart. There's a lot of information out there, and people will pay when they will buy when they see value. And the buyer determines value. They determine what they want and what they would like to pay and what they qualify for. So I think, you know, having a good team for your attorney and your mortgage person, because what Danny was saying is very true. Running title, very important. If there's delays, like what Nataly was saying, getting a survey, there are delays. So I think if people get ahead of it, and we see it all the time in Suffolk County with so many properties, people build driveways on their, you know, until you do title and survey, you don't know that your neighbor's driveway is on your property. You know, so we see that, we see it all the time. And these are all things that when you have a good attorney and you have, you know, good people in place to help.
The right team, like you said, you got to have the right team around you, whether you're buying or selling. I mean, you can't take anything for granted. You're selling or buying the largest financial asset in your portfolio. So you got to have the right team. I had a client I was talking to last night at 11 o'clock, and I said, do you have a good real estate attorney? And she's like, oh, my company gives me a free attorney. I said, no. I said, you can't do that.
It's important to really have professionals. And that speaks, I want to go to Nataly and Danny, you know, certainly having to have a professional and not just a friend or someone who gives you an attorney or, tell me a little bit about Nataly and Danny. What do people need to be aware of that they tend to be unaware of? Danny, could you start with that?
Well, I saw some questions pop up. A lot of people ask about the taxes on Long Island. That was one of the questions. Are they higher than the city? Yes, in general they are. I mean, there's obviously differences from town to town. Long Island's very, very large, but you're not getting the same home at 500, 700, 900, a million in the city as you're getting in Long Island. So, you know, what I would tell people is, you know, for example, every $6,000 a year of taxes is $500 a month, right? Right now, our average rates are sitting 2.625 to 2.75 on a 30-year fix. So you're just over $400 a month for every 100,000. So, you know, for if you're going to 400, so maybe 130,000, 140,000 at most a home, not even, would be the difference of 6,000 a year in taxes per 6,000. So you definitely get a lot more home, you get a lot more property, a lot more space. I think that's one of the main things that are driving people, and one of the big whys. I mean, I know if I didn't have a home and I lived in a co-op or condo right now, I probably wouldn't be here talking to all of you because my wife would have killed me by now, especially being on the phone from 7 in the morning till 10 at night. So that's a very big thing that I've seen a lot of people asking. Also closing costs. A lot of people who haven't bought a home before have no idea what they're getting into. They say, I have enough money for the house, and they do. They have enough money for the down payment, but they forget you have to pay somebody fees.
What is that, Danny? Can you tell us a little bit about what closing costs are? You know, or some of the things that are part of what closing costs are?
So they're regulated, some of them by state, some of them by county. There's a major difference. Like mortgage tax is more than double in the boroughs than it is in Long Island. So in Long Island, you know, you have mortgage tax, which is 0.8% of your loan amount. You have recording fees in Nassau, probably around $2,000, ballpark. Suffolk, 1,500. I mean, I think to be conservative. I tell everybody, if you want to be overly prepared, you know, try to have 3 to 4% of your purchase price. If you in Long Island, if you have that, that's not just fees. That's covering if they're going to collect 6 months of property taxes to set up in an escrow account, or if the taxes are due when the buyers are closing. That includes their attorney. That includes if there's an oil tank, you know, to have you got to pay for the oil. They'll do a reading prior to closing. A lot of people don't plan on that. So that comes back to what you guys were all saying is having a very good real estate attorney. I tell everybody, you know, I have a very good friend of mine who's a neurosurgeon, but if I break my toe, I'm not going to him. I'd rather go to somebody, or if I have to, you know, get therapy, you go to the specialist who does it every single day for a living, because they could be missing major issues that it's not, you know, I don't think what any of us do is rocket science. It's just from doing it over and over and over, repeatedly learning from mistakes, learning what comes up. And you just need to have an expert in that field. Otherwise, it can turn south very, very fast.
I could just piggyback.
Danny, yeah, Natalie, please.
Before we get to, you know, my advice or whatever it is, Danny was talking about closing costs. A lot of our clients, unfortunately, literally come to the week of the closing, and I'm sending them a pre-closing statement, which basically lists out, you know, net proceeds to the seller, what checks have to be dispersed, what funds, where are they coming from, who's paying for what. And the purchasers are like, what? Like, they don't realize that A, the bank is taking their own closing costs. B, they're paying title out of pocket, usually, unless they're taking a loan amount, you know, that's higher than their purchase price or whatever it is to cover those additional closing costs. If you're buying a co-op or a condo, there are additional fees there in terms of maintenance, etc. There's water bills, there's things that title collects for that people forget about. So closing costs not only come from your bank, it's going to be title, it's going to be your attorney's fees, it's going to be any sort of adjustments between you and the seller. So that's really something to be aware of. And I actually say almost the same thing as Danny, but I try to be really conservative. I mean, you know, just to know that you have that additional 5%, 4% of your purchase price so that you also have money at the end. I once had a client who purchased a home that needed repairs. He knew it needed repairs. And the day of the closing, he was like, you know, Natalie, we have a leak in our roof and I literally don't have money to fix it. And I was like, you know, how did we come to this? But that's where your mortgage broker really comes into play, just to discuss, you know, how much money you actually need, what you can actually afford. And that's like the first step. But in terms of choosing an attorney, I really, really think it's important to choose a real estate transactional attorney. I know some background information about landlord-tenant stuff. Don't send me to court. I do not want to represent you. You know, it's just not my day-to-day. My day-to-day is transactional stuff. I also do commercial, which is completely different, but you want someone who knows these little details about, you know, what to look for in title, whether it's a condo as opposed to a home, you know, what the next step is. And also I pride myself on being extremely responsive and communicating with my brokers as well as my client and keeping everyone in the loop. And so to have an attorney who's responsive, and, you know, communicates well, is clear, is extremely important.
It shows. Each one of you are saying the same thing, which is critical, you know, making sure you have the right people in place, and that right from the outset, you know, you get your broker, you get your mortgage broker, you get your attorney, and have them all working together to help you from the beginning of the process to the end. It seems this is the way that you're not going to be surprised by things and be able to have the most enjoyable and smooth process.
Yeah.
We have so many great questions from the audience, but I wanted to get each one of you to give me just kind of your parting words of wisdom, your best advice. Jeannie, would you get us started with like your words of wisdom? And then we have some wonderful questions from the attendees.
I know, I've been seeing all these great questions.
We can talk forever. This is amazing.
I really do think that people just have to be very prepared given COVID. The days of just, you know, coming out for a weekend, looking at open houses, to me is really not a good idea. I really think that if you are serious about selling, it's a great time to sell. There are buyers out there, and my best advice for a seller would be to get your house ready and look at the numbers. This is a very price sensitive market. So I think if it's priced well, you're going to do well. So that's my advice to sellers. My advice to buyers is, if you're in a competitive price range, you are not going to be alone. There are many other buyers out there that you are going to be competing with. And the way to get yourself in a great position is to be prepared. Get your pre-approval. If you have a pre-approval that was pre-COVID, it is not good. You need to update your pre-approvals after COVID. That's number one. And then you really should have an inspectors lined up. You should have an attorney lined up, speak to people, interview people, get everything ready. So that way, when you go out there and find that house, you're ready. And it's going to put you in a much stronger buying position. And sellers are going to respond to it. And they're going to really appreciate an agent who can present an offer for you that is professional and in writing and supported by a pre-approval and ready to go. And that seller is going to respond to your offer. And that's my best advice to both.
That's great advice. That's great advice. Thank you. Chris, what about you? What's your parting words of wisdom before you get
My parting words of wisdom. Yeah, I mean, listen, the most important thing is to have the right team in place. I believe that starts with a good real estate broker who is going to then advise you, make sure you have a fantastic real estate attorney like Natalie, is someone like that, and make sure that you're pre-approved, get your finances in order, and they are, like, I think, a good real estate agent, a good real estate broker is going to be like the coach, where they're going to set up the team. They're going to say, we have to put these parts in place to be able to successfully conclude a transaction and get you to your real estate goals. In regards to the market, I saw a couple of questions pop up, and in terms of market, I know you're going to get to the questions, but just to touch base on where I see the market right now. I mean, it's not a secret. We're in a very aggressive seller's market, but that does not mean that there aren't any buying opportunities. There are some fantastic buying opportunities, and I think once getting back to the why, once you familiarize yourself with what your goals are, what your needs are, where you want to be, there are opportunities there in both sectors. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of volatility in the market in the pandemic, but that has also created a lot of very interesting situations. I have sellers who've called me and said, I have a seller, for example, he built a house for himself, and he has a vacation house in Puerto Rico. Built a beautiful $2 million house here in Gold Coast for himself. He called me in March and said, I'm not coming back, sell my house. So he just went above and beyond on this house, and now he's going to take a loss, and he's going to take a big loss. And so that's a great opportunity for a person looking to come in from the city. They get this immaculate house that's done, by a seller who did it all for himself, as opposed to a flipper or a builder.
Call Chris if you're interested in a house.
Yeah, exactly.
Call Jeanne and Chris. They know.
Yeah,
the
so I think there's
brokers that are connected, or the people that are who know what's going on in the pulses of the communities that you're interested in, and you can really point people in the right direction. I want to get to Danny. What is your word of wisdom for people before we move on to our questions? I know you have a million, so just pick one.
I mean, really, I tell everybody, even if you're a seller, if you're looking to buy another home, make sure your financing's in place also before you think about selling. Right now with the changes that happened, if people stopped making mortgage payments in certain instances or co-signed for people who didn't make payments, where normally those mortgage payments would be eliminated, they're getting hit for their, say you co-sign for your sister, right? Your sister makes 12 payments, it's no longer considered your debt. If your sister took advantage of the forbearance, that option that a lot of banks offered, her debt now is your debt because you don't have a 12-month history. It's just one small example of many, many things that have changed. So even though you may have an 820 credit score and you're putting down all the equity from the sale of your home and you have a great job, it can be a big difference of whether you qualify or not if hitting you for a second mortgage on top of that. Or if they're looking to, move into their new home before closing on the sale of their home, you're getting hit twice now on your home and your sister's home, and you're buying a home if you need financing. So really make sure your financing is in place. My opinion, and I'm biased, but talk to a mortgage banker, not to a mortgage broker. Unless you have a lot of issues, then you go there. They have great niche options. But go to somebody that does not get paid by charging points or benefit from interest rate.
Yes,
we underwrite. For
Danny, what is the difference between a mortgage banker quickly and a mortgage broker?
So a broker has the options to shop around different banks. They can pick which one they feel fits your needs. They'll send it to that bank to be approved. If they're going to give a rate, if they want to get paid off from the bank, they're going to offer a rate higher than what the buyer would normally get, and then the bank will pay them. They have to disclose that now. Or you can get the rate that the banks offer, and you can be charged points. A mortgage banker does not send your paperwork to another bank. We actually underwrite, meaning we approve the loan directly for those investors. We are the ones that lock in the rates directly for those investors. We are the ones who put up the money at the closing table for those investors. So for example, we have over, I think, 13 or 14 investors that we bank with, but like I do it for Wells Fargo, Citibank, and Chase, just those three alone right there, opposed to going to one bank. Like, say if you're going to retail bank, that's a whole different thing also. But if you go to Chase, you have Chase. That's all you have. You shop around before you go into contract. You hope the salesperson is telling you the accurate rate, because you can call the same bank and get, 3 different rates from 3 different people. It's not JP Morgan climbing out of his grave to give you a number. It's a salesperson that you hope is being honest and setting expectations that they meet or exceed. So, with us, again, not being paid off of rate, you have all the multiple banks. You're keeping them with you until the day you actually lock in. And that's the day you're going to pick the investor solely off of whichever one has the lowest rate. And without getting too technical, we also have less guidelines because we don't have any of the retail guidelines. And I know, like Nataly will know, like if I told her I don't require CO searches, if she works with any of those major banks, she's giving them. There's no matter what. She's handing them in. When I underwrite for Chase or Wells, they don't require, the actual investors for those banks don't require CO searches. It's the retail overlays. So, and that's just one thing that I know everybody in here has an issue with, if there's an issue with a CO. So there's just a lot more options. We have less guidelines. You have a higher odd of getting a lower rate because you have 13, 14 different options to choose on lock-in day, and not the one that had hopefully the best rate when you first decided this is who I'm going with. Because no bank has the lowest rates every day of the year. So that's the difference between a mortgage banker, broker, and retail.
That's very important.
And my advice would be the same for the buyers too. Definitely make sure you're pre-approved. You got to know not only what you're approved for, but what you're comfortable spending. And with someone like us, like again, we actually give the mortgage commitment in advance of a contract. That's for any home to be determined. So if they want to work with Contour, for example, they'll be able to know I'm 100% approved. The bank's underwritten my file completely, verified employment, got transcripts from the IRS, they verified our assets. So one, they're comfortable. Two, the seller knows that they already have a commitment. That's a lot stronger than any pre-approval, because the pre-approval is only as good as the loan officer doing it. And if you don't know that loan officer, it's anyone's guess. And three, they get to see all of the closing costs in advance and the loan estimate, which is a federally formatted form that every bank has to provide. But most buyers don't see that form until they're in contract. They've already signed their name for buying $1 million home, or $500,000, even a $200,000, whatever the price range is. I always feel it's better to be educated and know what you're getting yourself into in advance. And it's at no cost. There's no obligation to use us. So if they want to go that route, that's I think the strongest way to go forward. And it lets everybody who's taking them out, every realtor and attorney they're working with, well, I keep getting calls. I'm sorry. It lets them know too. They've done all of the legwork. They're serious. They want to buy a home, and they can buy a home, and there is no questions about it.
Well, we will make sure that everyone has all of our panelists' contact information, so you can get in touch with them directly and be able to discuss. But let me just quickly get to Nataly, your quick word of wisdom, so I know these attendees have incredible questions that I want to get to. So quick words of wisdom.
So I know earlier I mentioned that purchasers who are interested in Long Island should be aware of oil tanks, and someone had a question like, sellers don't always have to remove an oil tank. No, they do not. That is not what I said. What I'm saying is you should be aware that there are oil tanks. There could be a leak. They should be inspected. And if there is a leak, they should be removed, and that has to be certified. So my word of advice to purchasers is 100% educate yourself. Know what you're getting yourself into. Know what the market looks like. Know who you're dealing with, do an inspection, and just take the necessary steps. I know people are eager to move. I know people are, want to rush. That's like the biggest thing. Everyone wants to rush to the closing. We can't do that. We got to take our time. We have to do our due diligence, which is the hugest thing as an attorney, just to be sure that you're protected. And a word of advice to sellers, beware of what you say to your purchaser. In contracts, we try really hard for sellers to not make any sort of direct representations as to the home. Yes, you're living in the home, but you don't know really what's going on behind the walls. And so it's a purchaser's responsibility to, make themselves aware of that. So just as a seller, be honest. But also don't make any sort of promises or anything when someone comes to look at your house. it's just too soon and you don't really know if there's any sort of consequence to what you're saying.
Great. Thank you so much. So let me get to some of these fantastic questions. I know we had one question about 55 and over communities. Are these something that are available on Long Island, in Nassau County and Suffolk County, Jeannie, Chris?
Yes, for sure. We have a lot in Nassau County, and they're great. I mean, the amenities are phenomenal. They're situated locally, walking, driving distance to a lot of amenities that that are attractive to people 55 and over: parks, golf courses, shopping, and then the in-house amenities. Almost all of them offer some sort of in-house amenities: pools, gyms, exercise classes, and tennis courts, all that stuff. So there's a tremendous amount.
Great. Jeannie, did you want to add anything about the 55 and over communities? Same in Suffolk County, there
Yeah,
are?
pretty much the same.
Okay.
We're high demand for them, but we don't have a tremendous amount, but further out east.
Okay.
We're getting a lot of sellers who want to take advantage of the market, because obviously there's an influx in demand, and obviously demand, lack of inventory increases value of homes. So there is a slight increase in home valuations, although buyers are asking for what we call a COVID discount. They want a slight discount on a home after the pandemic, but we're educating properly. But so we have a lot of clients who are in these big houses, 5-bedroom houses, and it's just them alone now. The kids are all away, so they want to downsize, take advantage of the selling market, and go into a community that everything's taken care of. The snow removal, garbage, the outside of the facilities, roof and siding and windows in some aspects. All that's taken care of.
Can another great question? Thank you, Chris. Another great question. Can a broker represent both a buyer and a seller?
No, representation is only one-sided. So when I'm showing a house to someone, if it's on my listing and I'm not representing the buyer, I'm automatically a broker's agent. I work for the listing broker. So you cannot represent both a buyer and a seller. That's the whole purpose of New York State disclosure, where you disclose to a buyer, hey, by the way, I just want to let you know that I'm a broker's agent on this. You could hire me as a buyer's agent, which means that you'll work with me exclusively, and then my fiduciary responsibilities then belong to you. But the short answer is no.
Okay. And a question for you as well, Jeannie and Chris. Someone was saying that they bought a house in March and they saw it briefly, but they couldn't touch anything. They had to move through the house very quickly. And they thought it was okay because a lot of people were buying homes sight unseen. They're closing in a couple weeks and they want to be able to see the house as a final walkthrough. The broker's a dual agent, so I guess they're handling both, but not representing both, because you said that's not possible. Do they have a right to see the house? The broker's saying no, but do they have a right to see the house again?
Well, if they're in contract, they should be speaking to their attorney. That's number one. Because if they have bought a house and they are in contract and there is any kind of question of anything, they should not only be asking the real estate agent, but they should 100% be asking their attorney, because they are in a legal contract.
Yeah, I was going to cut in.
So I would defer to Nataly, but in my opinion, as a broker, whether or not you're representing the seller or the buyer, there's always a final walkthrough, and the buyer has every right to do a final inspection prior to closing. But it sounds like a question for your attorney to me.
Okay, great.
Well,
Yeah,
I want to chime in on that
anything
quickly.
to that,
Natalie,
Nataly?
good. Did you want to say something, Natalie?
I just wanted to address it because obviously there would be, I would have to review her contract, but assuming that it's a standard New York contract, it always states that there's a walkthrough within 48 hours. And so, yes, you should be entitled to it. 100%. Please contact your attorney. Feel free to contact me. I always give free legal advice. And, if you're at the closing stage, I would hope and assume that you did an inspection. And so that should give you a little bit of, guidance and a little bit of more confidence in the home. But definitely reach out to your attorney, because that should not be a rejected request.
Great. And
One
Daniel,
one thing I picked up in that question that you read, which is alarming, is that they said that the agent is a dual agent, and they might be under the impression that the agent is representing both parties. So that's an alarming.
Well, Chris, I think that
section of that.
contract is dual agency, but that,
Right.
Natalie, I don't think that that's in New York State. I think we're getting off topic, but.
all right, well, thank you. It's something to be aware of, that agents can't represent both sides, and just be aware of that and ask the right questions is what it sounds like with this. Danny, is there a rule of thumb to know what a person can afford in terms of being able to figure out what's the right price range to look for in a home?
Yeah, speak to a loan officer.
Okay.
There is a formula.
There's no, I mean, so, it all comes down to their debt to income ratios, credit scores, how much they're putting down. It's not just one specific formula. Same as when people add a cosign, like, oh, I'll add my husband, I'll add my wife. All right, you added $40,000 a year of income. You also added $1,500 a month of debt. So, it comes down to, if you go like general, for most banks, 45% is what most of them want to see, unless you're over 765 loan amount, 765,000 loan amount. Then a lot of the jumbo banks want to keep it at 42%. But like banks like mine, again, we don't have the overlays. So some loans you can go up to 56% of your income, and that's prior to taxes coming out. So it's not that simple. Please don't try and use that formula. If you have deferred student loans, everyone goes, look, I have deferred student loans. I don't have to make a payment. You're going to get hit for 1% of those balances, unless you're going Freddie Mac, which is half of 1%. But I get guys, that are right out of school, and they have a $400,000 or $300,000, medical student loan, and they're getting hit for $3,000 or $4,000 a month, even if it's in deferment. It's 1% of their balance. So really, talk to a loan officer. Talk to me. I mean,
yeah.
But talk to somebody who's in the industry.
We'll get everyone your contact information. Just on that note, someone was asking, they have a lot of debt. How does that affect their ability to get a mortgage?
Well, it raises your debt to income ratio, so that'll lower the amount of home you're allowed to or finance. You can always remedy the problem by putting more money down at it. But, property taxes play a big role too. Like somebody was mentioning earlier with the taxes being different from Queens to Long Island. The house that you can buy in Long Island would be maybe a lower loan amount, depending on your income, if you're maxing yourself out, if the taxes are double, because you're getting hit monthly for those taxes, right? It's all included. When you make your mortgage payment, it usually includes your mortgage payment, your homeowner's insurance, and your property taxes. Mm-hmm. So, again, every 3,000 is $250 a month. Every 10,000 of mortgage is $40 a month right now, $41 a month. So when one goes up, if you're maxing yourself out or you're at the limit, if one goes up, the other has to go down.
Got it. Thank you.
Or you could pay off debt to qualify too. So I have, people who have 50,000 in debt and they're paying, $1,900 a month or $2,000 a month on it. Sometimes instead of putting 100,000 down on a home or 200, they'll put down minus 50. Maybe they'll have a slightly higher mortgage payment for $200 a month or $210, but now they're eliminating $2,000 a month of debt, which is really nice, especially moving into their first home. And so again, it's all case by case scenario.
And it goes to show why speaking with a mortgage banker and speaking with you ahead of time is very valuable, because then you go to Jeanne and you go to Chris and you have a better sense of what you really can afford and how you can manage your money to be able to get the home that you want.
And it's free. It doesn't cost anything to talk to somebody. I don't think anybody here charges to have a conversation.
I do.
That's wonderful. We're so lucky to have you here today. Someone was asking about selling a house. Should they stage it?
It's case by case basis. I mean, it obviously helps. I always give people an example of like going on a first date. You know, that first impression, you want to, look your best, have a nice shaved head and be, and look your best. But it's the same thing with the house. So you want the house to look its best. It's not always required, but it definitely helps. It's important to walk with an experienced real estate professional who's going to know what buyers are looking for when they go through a house. I tell my sellers, clutter is the #1 turnoff. When you're walking through a house and you see a lot of clutter, people just, it's a big turnoff. So,
yeah. Jeannie, did you want to add anything about staging?
Yes, so I'm a big fan of staging, and staging means a lot of different things. Staging the home could be just, as Chris mentions, just putting things away, packing, decluttering. But as one of the things that I do with most of my listings is I always offer to have, I work with one person who's part of my team who's a stager, and she comes in at my expense and just goes over it just to give, the seller some options. And then depending on what the plan is for the house, we come up with a proposal for that seller. If the seller wants to do all, none, or part, that's fine. But I think there is a huge value because let's face it, everybody buys and eliminates and searches from the picture, and it's all online. So how you present your home is very, very important. And you have one opportunity, just one shot. And if that doesn't work, then you are in a very bad position trying to backtrack because you're the first coming out. So that's why I do believe in staging. I think it's very, very important.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask one final question because it keeps coming up, and I know that agents have a certain way of dealing with it, but schools keep coming up about schools on Long Island.
So we agents by law, we're not allowed to comment on schools. However, we are the source of the source, and that is the most important thing we can offer. First of all, you can Google and find out anything you'd like to know on the internet, and all the school websites are on many different venues across the board. So we always recommend to a buyer to do their homework. We have it on our websites and so forth. But we as real estate agents are not permitted by law to discuss comparisons, information, anything. It's something that we highly recommend for buyers to go out and do their homework and find out about communities and drive around. They get familiar with things, get comfortable with things. And now with COVID, quite frankly, we don't even know if we're going back to school. So, we're all waiting.
Zoom classrooms.
So right now, there's a lot going on for a lot of people and families, and it's a viable concern right now. And hopefully New York figures it out. We'll see.
Yeah. Well,
I tell people too, besides looking online, I mean, you get pretty much everything you want. Drive around, find a family walking down with their kids. Find the most seasoned person you can find on the block. They'll be very upfront with you. Just drive around.
I just think there's more ways to find out good information. I think that reading, becoming educated, learning about different things, it's all part of doing your homework. And many times I work with buyers who have a wide range And we have traveled, I have traveled with my clients from Huntington, Cold Spring Harbor, and then end up selling them, you know, a home in Garden City. Because after they circle around and do, you know, it's a whole package of what they're looking for. And I am here to be able to help them figure it out and to help them navigate it. But you know, we just want to be the source of the source. And what we have is a tremendous amount of information to where buyers can go to find out all this information that they need.
I think mommy groups also help.
What? I'm sorry?
Mommy groups.
Yeah. They don't hold back. They don't
No,
hold back.
they're brutally honest.
I want to thank all of you for being here. I mean, I think, you know, what we've learned as number one is homework, but to find the right group of people. And we've done that homework for you, bringing together these esteemed panelists, Jeanne, Chris, from Daniel Gale, Sotherby's International Realty, Danny with Contour Mortgage, Nataly, really incredible information. Thank you so much for all of you being here today.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you to our attendees. You will get an email within 24 hours with everyone's contact information. I hope that you enjoyed it. I appreciate your spending time with us. I want everyone to please stay safe and stay healthy. And again, thank you for joining us. Have a great
Thank you so much.
You guys.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Be well.